Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing the historical romance reader book tag. This tag was created by Jessica from Peaceful Books. I'll link her down below. I'll link her original video down below as well if you want to check it out. If you follow either of us, you probably know that we, along with our good friend Lisa from Remarkably Lisa, we co-host the historical romance readathon, which is actually going on right now. And I figured what better time to finally do this tag, which I've been wanting to do for a while, than during historical romance readathon. I also did want to post something historical romance related, some historical romance content during the week, so here I am, and of course I would post this on like the last day of the readathon. But let's just jump into the tag. Jess created some really good questions, some really hard questions, and also if anyone else wants to do this tag, feel free to. Consider this me tagging you to do this. The first question is, what was the first historical romance that you ever read? And already we're kind of getting into a hard question because honestly, I don't remember. It's kind of between two authors. I couldn't really tell you which one I read first, but I do know that I actually started reading historical romances through Highlander romances. Highlanders and Scots, they got me hooked. And for a while, that was all I read really. The only historical romances that I read were Highlander romances. So the first historical romance that I ever read was either by Karen Marie Moning or by Maya Banks. I am leaning towards Karen Marie Moning because I think I jumped from urban fantasy to historicals because of her. I read her Fever series, which I loved, and then I saw that she had some romances, some historical romances, so I decided to give them a try. This is Beyond the Highland Mist with the original cover. It is the first book in her Highlander series. It was published back in 1999. It's an interesting series. It does jump around a bit because the first two books, they're your regular medieval, Highlander, Scottish historical romances, and then the next two books are time travel historical romances. So the series does incorporate some paranormal aspects to it, but I do enjoy it, mostly for nostalgic reasons because it was one of the first historical romances that I read. But I will say I do love the time travel romances in this series. For Maya Banks, I discovered her McCabe trilogy. This was around the same time that I was also reading Karen Marie Moning, so I can't really tell you which one I read first. The only one I own right now is book 2, Seduction of a Highland Lass. Book 1 is my favorite of the series though. It is in bed with the Highlander. That one, single parent romance. It's got a marriage of convenience. The series follows these three brothers who are all fantastic. I love the series. I love Maya Banks, her historical romances especially. I'm still waiting on that one Highlander romance from her though that has been pushed back for like a decade, but I will hold out hope that it will come someday. That third book that I'm waiting on is part of the Montgomerys and Armstrong series. They're both fantastic series. If you love Highlander romances, you can probably understand why I was obsessed with them and why they were the reason why I got into historical romances. The second question is, what was the last historical romance that you read? Mine was Ravished by Amanda Quick. This was on my TBR for the readathon and I finally got to read it. This is what the epic step back looks like. Ravished is probably Amanda Quick's most popular historical romance book. I have been dying to read this one ever since I saw it first on Instagram, I think, and a lot of YouTube comments as well told me that Ravished was their favorite Amanda Quick book. I enjoyed it so much. I gave it 4 stars. It was my first Amanda Quick book. I'm not sure why. I didn't really expect all the humor in this, but there was a lot of great banter. It reminded me a lot of Lord of the Scoundrels by Loretta Chase. I don't know why I expected this to be all dark and intense, but it's not. It's really charming. I loved our main characters. They have so much great banter together. Our scarred, tortured hero, a la Beauty and the Beast, he is actually a total cinnamon roll at heart. Harriet, our heroine, is a paleontologist, which was a lot of fun. She is very, very obsessed with her bones. Gideon's dry humor was so great. I loved his sarcasm. I also love the marriage of convenience here. It was great. I'm so glad that I finally got to read Amanda Quick. Question 3 is, who is an underrated historical romance author you wish more people read? For me, that would be Sherry Thomas. I don't really see her that often on Instagram or on YouTube. Her historicals definitely don't get as much love love as her Lady Sherlock series, her mystery series, or her fantasies, which is a shame because she is like a queen of angst for historical romances. Anytime you pick up a historical romance from her, you are guaranteed like gut-wrenching emotions, so much angst. Her historicals are also pretty unconventional at times. In Beguiling the Beauty, which is book 1 in her Fitzhugh trilogy, this is one of my favorites from her. The heroine here decides to get revenge on the hero who spoke really badly of her behind her back. She gets revenge by pretending to be someone else and getting him to fall in love with her. And then in Delicious, which is another one of my favorites, the hero is like an up-and-coming political figure and the heroine is a famous chef, so this is like a foodie historical romance. She has quite a lot of marriage and trouble romances as well. Those ones I really need to get to. I'm just kind of holding off because I need to prepare myself when I go into her books. But yeah, I would love to see more people read Cherry Thomas. I know the people who do love her are like huge fanatics of her, but if you love angst and you love historical romance, definitely give her a try. Question 4 is, who is a historical romance author that you haven't read yet but need to? I mean, I have a lot, but I do have 2 that are high up on my TBR that I'm going to read soon for a video. The first one is Katherine Anderson, who writes Western historical romances, which I don't actually read that much. I usually save my Westerns for Beverly Jenkins, but I have heard nothing but amazing things about Katherine Anderson, especially this one, Annie's Song. So I found myself an original copy with the step back, which is so beautiful. Annie is mute here, I believe. I'm also just gonna show you another step back of hers because why not? This is Cherish. I love her step back so much, but unfortunately she doesn't really have that many. And the other author that I'm hoping to get to soon is Kathleen E. Woodiwiss, who is one of the OGs of historical romance. This one is Forever in Your Embrace. She also had a lot of trade historical romance paperbacks. This is So Worthy, My Love, and they also have the step back. So Katherine Anderson and Kathleen E. Woodiwiss, 2 authors that I really need to get to soon. The next question, question 5, is what historical romance would you recommend to people who are new to the genre? I don't know if it's bad that I can't answer these questions with just one book or one author, because I have 2 authors for this question. The first author is Sarah MacLean and her Rules of Scoundrel series. This series was actually the one that actually got me into Regency historical romances. After I discovered Highlander romances, I kind of took a break from historical romance, but then I read the Rules of Scoundrel series and just fell in love. Well, fell in love all over again with historical romance. Book 1 is A Rogue by Any Other Name, and it's got this beautiful step back. It's not my favorite of the series, but it did get me hooked. Now book 2, One Good Earl Deserves a Lover. This one is absolutely my favorite of the series. It's got a bookish, nerdy heroine, and Cross is still one of my favorite heroes of historical romances. He is such a scoundrel. Book 3 is No Good Duke Goes Unpunished, and this one had a very interesting setup with the hero believing that he killed the heroine, but he actually didn't. And book 4 is Never Judge a Lady by Her Cover, which had the biggest friggin' plot twist, series plot twist of all time. So Sarah MacLean is a really easy answer for this because she was the one who got me hooked onto Regency historicals. She's really easy and addicting to read, and her historical settings aren't really anything too complicated. The other author who is also a really good entryway, a really easy entryway into historical romance is Tessa Dare. Similar to Sarah MacLean, she's really easy to read. She's also very humorous. Her books are almost like rom-com historical romances. They're hilarious and silly and charming. Like, you can't help but love them. The one that I would recommend is When It's Got Tessa Knot, which was my first Tessa Dare book, and it's got this step back. So if you're new to historical romances, those 2 are very easy and very fun to read. Question 6 is, what is your favorite historical romance of all time? And I mean, this is me, so I did not choose just one. I chose 4 because I refused to pick just one. These are no particular order of my favorites, they're just my top 4 historical romances. Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase. I love this one so much. I have 3 copies of this book. The first copy that I ever got was sent by Avon, I think, and it's the one without a step back. So obviously I had to go and find one with a step back, which looks like this. And I also had to get myself the original edition, published in 1994. It's got this beautiful iconic cover. So this book is one of my top favorites because It's got the best banter that I have ever read in any romance book. Jessica is one of my favorite heroines of all time. Like, this woman is who I want to grow up to be. She's just so cool and amazing. It's also got a marriage of convenience. A lot of my favorites have marriages of convenience, and I'm sure you all guessed one of my favorites is a Lacey kleypas book. I had a very tough time deciding on which book to choose, but I just went with Dreaming of You because Derek Craven. These are my two copies. As you can tell, if I love a book, I probably have more than one copy or more than one edition of it. The one with the red dress is the reprint, and the pink one with the step back is the original. This one was published back in 1994. Here we have another fantastic heroine. I mean, she literally saves the hero's life when they first meet, but Derek Craven is everything in this book. He is a rags to riches tortured hero. He has been through some awful things, but he has climbed himself out of the gutter to become the infamous and a wealthy man that he is today. Derek and Sarah's romance is so freaking heart-wrenching and emotional. It's fantastic, and there is a reason why this book is so many people's favorite Lacey kleypas book. Another one of my favorites is Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. This is my favorite Beverly Jenkins book. I am obsessed with this book. The romance here is just utter perfection. Hester and Galen stole my heart. I cannot emphasize enough how beautiful this book was. The writing, the romance, the characters. It was so perfect, and of course, who doesn't love a reformed rake who just worships his heroine? And I own the hardcover of the original edition with this beautiful illustrated cover. This was such a lucky find. I found it on Amazon for only $10. And this last one that I have to include is actually one that I read this year. As soon as I read it, as soon as I finished it, it just shot up to the top of my favorites list. It is Whitney, My Love by Judith McNaught. And once again, I have two editions. The original with the stunning cover, and here's the back cover. This book was published back in 1985, and even 35 years later, it still held up for me. I will say there were some problematic scenes from the original that were rewritten, so definitely get the updated edition with the additional chapters if you're hesitant about those problematic scenes. But I love this book with my whole heart. I was obsessed with Whitney and Clayton. I mean, I am always a sucker for an obsessed alpha hero, and Clayton is exactly that. And really all he wants is for Whitney to love him and to marry him. The romance here is so charming. It gets intense and angsty and emotional. Clayton does do some really dumb things, but I just could not get enough of the romance here, the love between Whitney and Clayton. It freaking blew my mind when I read it earlier this year. Question 7 is, do you prefer new or old school historical romances? And given that my top 4 historical romance books of all time were published before 2000, I think I forgot to mention that Indigo was published in 1996, I would say that old school is probably my favorite. Question 8 is, what are your favorite historical romance tropes? I've mentioned marriage of convenience so many times already, so obviously that is a favorite trope. Any marriage in trouble romances, amnesia romances, Highlanders, enemies to lovers, especially when there's good banter. Some of my favorite banter in books are from historical romances, and I also love epistolary romances. Question 9 is, what are your favorite historical romance settings? I don't really pay attention to the setting really, but I guess I would have to say Scotland, like the Highlander romances, or when our main characters have to run off to Gretna Green to get married. In terms of era, I would say Regency and Victorian. They're your classic historical romance eras. Question 10 is, what is the oldest historical romance that you own? That would be The Wolf and the Dove by Kathleen E. Woodowis. This was published back in 1974, and it's also got the sprayed red edges. This is not her debut though. She published 2 years earlier in 1972. That one is The Flame and the Flower, but I don't have it. Question 11 is, what historical romances are you excited for? First is Devil in Disguise by Lacey kleypas. I mean, I did read it, but I'm still so freaking excited for it to release and for everyone else to read it because it is so freaking good. That book is easily one of my favorites of 2021, and we are finally in its release month. I'm also excited for Bombshell by Sarah MacLean. This is the much awaited book for Caleb and Cecily. These two were teased so hard in The Day of the Duchess, which was one of my favorite Sarah MacLean books. I know so many people asked the author if we were getting Caleb and Cecily, and she finally granted our wishes. It's the first book in a new series, the Hellbell series, and it's coming out in August 2021. Also releasing in in August is a book that I am dying for. There's no specific date, but it's supposed to release in August. It's The Sinful Ways of Jamie Mackenzie by Jennifer Ashley. It's the first book in the Mackenzie's 2 series. It's the second generation series, and Jamie, our hero, is Ian Mackenzie's oldest son. I am so freaking excited for this book. When I saw it was announced on the author's website, I may have screamed, because if you didn't know, one of my favorite books is The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie, and we're gonna be getting this couple's oldest son's book. I'm also excited for Pippa and the Prince of Secrets by Grace Callaway. I literally just read book 1 in the series, which is our group read for Historical Romance Readathon, Olivia and the Masked Duke. I read this, I had so much fun, and now I am dying for the rest of the series. Pippa, who is a widow, her book is coming out in September. Her hero is known as the Prince of Larks, who is this powerful London underworld figure, and he has been in love with her since they were kids. It sounds so great, and I really enjoyed all the characters in the series when I read book 1. The series is like a play on Charlie's Angels, so it's like Charlie's Angels but historical romance. And the last question is, what creators do you follow for historical romance recommendations? Obviously Jess from Peaceful Books and Lisa from Remarkably Lisa. Lisa has become a historical romance channel, in case you couldn't tell from the constant historical romance content. But I do also love Dana Quadrado and Tori from Novel Life. I do also get a lot of my recommendations from Instagram. Teresa from Reads Romance, Sarah from Romantically Swept Away, Lindsay from Pink Cowlin Reads, and Christy from Christy Reads a Lot. They all read so much historical romance, and they also show off a lot of historical romances that I end up wanting and then end up getting. I'll link everyone down below, so make sure you go follow them. Those are all the questions in this historical romance reader book tag. A big thank you to Jessica for creating this tag. If you need it, all the books that I mentioned will be down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!